Yeah, welcome into the Tuesday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Hope everybody is doing well. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you? What's going on?
Doing awesome.
That's good.
How are you?
That's good. I'm doing good. Doing good.
Good.
Keyser, what's going on?
Doing great. Joe, how are you really doing? Got to know.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I'm a Saturday Night Live character called Head Wound Harry, so
Or like
just for the-
Toonses.
Yeah, but I mean, there actually is a skit called Head Wound Harry where like the dog licks the guy's disgusting open head wound. Dana Carvey plays the role very well.
Please do indulge.
I think you just did.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. You want me to bring Gus or Quinn in here to lick my head?
No.
Yeah, I mean, Head Wound Harry, man, for Golden Age Saturday Night Live. But yeah, this is not fake. I actually have a head wound, so I went to the grocery store last night to get the prescription drugs I needed, and wore my hood over my head. Looked like I was going to rob the place. Pretty awesome.
Looked like Palpatine, man.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
At least you could play it off as you're like, it's really cold out there. So I don't want my head to get cold. Don't want my ears getting cold. So that's why I have the hood on.
Yes, that's what I was hoping people thought. Yes, but the strange looks said otherwise.
Oh boy, we got a lot to get into on the program here today. Alex Daugherty from the Tennessean will be with us at 6:30. We'll get into the Nashville Predators with him. Steve Layman from News Channel 5 at 7:30, talking all things Titans. Casey Alexander, Belmont men's basketball coach, will be with us at 8 o'clock. They got a big game tonight, taking on Bradley in the Missouri Valley Conference. We'll catch up with Casey Alexander at 8 o'clock. Take your thoughts in the meantime. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Ohio State takes down Notre Dame in the national title game. They win 34-23 last night. At one point, we're up 31-7 in the game, and then Notre Dame sort of mounted a comeback in that one. But Ohio State finishes the job. They win the first 12-team playoff. So Ohio State wins the first college football playoff in general a decade ago, and now has won the first 12-team college football playoff as well. Joe, your thoughts on the game last night and this run for Ohio State?
Yeah, pretty dominant, pretty impressive. Obviously an incredible about face for Ryan Day. Look, Ohio State's the first 4-team playoff. They were the last team in. People were very angry they got in. They ended up, waxing Alabama and Oregon. And everybody's like, oh, okay. I guess, you look at that team, that all the guys they had too, like Ezekiel Elliott and Michael Thomas and so on and so forth. Pretty freaking good. And then 10 years later, they're the first 12-team playoff winner as the 8 seed. So, but this was a team. I know someone put up the Athletic preseason stuff. I think 16 of our 28 people picked them to win it all. I believe I picked them to win it all going the year. They were the most talented team on paper. And look, to me, it's like Will Howard. I am hesitant here a little bit, but Will Howard and Riley Leonard, both very interesting quarterbacks to be in the national championship game. In one case, Riley Leonard, he tries hard and he makes some plays and he's a good runner. Will Howard, the way he threw the ball for these 4 games, I look at him like, okay, someone's going to take a flyer on him. Again, where will it be? Probably 4th or 5th round or something like that. But man, he did play so far beyond what I thought was possible with him based on the regular season and based on just his career before that. And I think that's still, if you just point to one thing, Jeremiah Smith was great all year. Sometimes he didn't get the ball because the quarterback didn't play well. He was incredible in this run.
Yeah, you had to figure at some point with Ohio State, Joe, that the $20 million roster was going to matter. And it did. It mattered in the college football playoff. And look, it was clear in the Tennessee game and then basically in every game after that they were just more talented than everybody. It was pretty obvious. And that was again the case last night. And look, I think there were some psychological things that they handled really well, right? Like it would have been easy for them to fold after the Michigan loss with all the negativity surrounding the program. Quite frankly, I thought that was an advantage for Tennessee heading into that first game, was the fact that there was so much negativity around Ohio State. And to their credit, they kind of leaned into that and said, screw you guys. We're going to go out here to show you that we're the best team. And that's what they did. And look, when it was 31-7 last night, I was just like, they are by far the best team in the country, which again makes the Michigan loss just astounding to me that happened. But when you finish it off with a national championship, I think Ryan Day has gotten the last laugh here.
Yes, no question. And again, this is only possible in the 12 team. So, again, some people take that as good or bad, devaluing the regular season, because Michigan, Ohio State kills them. That result kills them in the old way. And this way, it just sets them up. I also think that Tennessee game, I still think that if Tennessee hits a big shot early in that game and Ohio State fumbles or whatever, and there's a deficit, this may never get to this. I think the beginning of that game, the way they punched Tennessee in the mouth and immediately kind of took control, kind of got them rolling downhill. But I think that they were fragile then, and can't prove it, but I really think that could have gone differently, and this whole playoff could have gone differently. But also thought last night was a rough night for Marcus Freeman, man. Yep. Like the fake punt, it's like, just go for it. Yeah, that's just not when you're going to surprise someone with a fake punt. Kicking a field goal, down 16 to kick a field goal to put yourself down 13 with 9 minutes left. Like, you're just not going to have enough possessions for that to. I understand, like, if you do score 2 touchdowns, now you win,
right,
with extra points. But to me,
you got to score the touchdowns.
Yeah, with the time at that point, I think you just have to go. And so that to me was not great. Then, of course, Notre Dame made some other critical mistakes. They did show fight. I give them credit. Pigskin Pick'em, I'm angry because, if they don't hit that deep shot, I win by a half point. And I think I'm tied now with Keiser, but instead now he extended his lead because of that last field goal. And a lot of people either made or lost money on that last little field goal.
Yep, no doubt about it. So congratulations to Ohio State. They've won the national championship. And now I guess we'll see, if Ryan Day decides to stay. I assume he will at this point.
Get him, Vrabel.
But
hire him today, Vrabel.
Could be interesting there if he just walks off, says, all right, screw you guys. I'm going to be a coordinator in the NFL. Be interested to see what happens on that front. Speaking of coordinators in the NFL, Joe, the Titans have found a new one. And John Fossil, their next special teams coach, coming in as the special teams coordinator from the Dallas Cowboys. Now, some interesting stuff here, Joe. According to Kaharski, there's no real clarity on the Colt Anderson part of this right now. Now, we know he's not the special teams coordinator anymore because John Fossil is, but I guess that there's a chance that Colt Anderson could still remain on the staff at some point. We'll see what happens with that. But John Fossil, coming over from the Cowboys, obviously they fired Mike McCarthy, so he's now joining the Titans. Obviously a guy that's got a good reputation around the league, has been in the league for a while. What do you make of this hire for the Titans with John Fossil as their new special teams coach?
Yeah, it's an accomplished guy. I know, he's one of those special teams coaches. There's 3 or 4 in the league, but the broadcast of the game is always ready to show them. And, again, they're special teams, they do good things, and then they're all excitable and everything. And he's one of those guys. I mean, the numbers are very good on what he's done, so it's a good hire. We're not sure about Colt Anderson, Kaharski still, because I saw, this yesterday afternoon where it's I think A to Z reported he was fired, I believe. And Kaharski said, well, there's no clarity yet. We're still not sure.
The last I've seen from Kaharski is nothing on Colt Anderson is finalized except that he's not the special teams coordinator.
Yeah, this is where it's the Titans can just easily not make things so hard on themselves, by just communicating clearly, but can't do it. Just can't do it. Just, and I hope at least it's not that case for him. It just hasn't been reported. But I mean, just come on, guys. This should not be a thing where people who cover your team on a day-to-day basis have conflicting messages on what's going on with your staff. And look, it's a lightning rod issue with this guy, as has been since September. How is this difficult? I mean, and also if you're him, so obviously you're being demoted. I mean, I suppose it's like, well, if I don't have any other options, I guess I'll take the assistant special teams coach job. It's better than nothing. I don't know. But, then a lot of people would probably be like, okay, thanks. I'm going to go find another job.
I mean, would he be able to find another job? But yeah, I guess that's a
Well,
good point.
Yeah. No, I mean, right. That's why he may just take it. But but is that what's happening? Who knows?
I don't know.
But look who he hired.
No
Yay.
idea.
Ignore the man behind the curtain.
But hey, one of my favorite things about special teams coaches, Joe, is for the most part around the league, if things are going well, you don't really discuss the special teams coach that much. So I would love, other than the occasional, hey, attaboy, good job here, to really not talk about John Fossil a whole lot next season if I'm a Titans fan.
Yeah, but he's got a cool nickname and he gets really excited on the sideline. So
True.
if they do some, like, I hear you. For the most part, you want to be like refs and offensive linemen, right? And just basically, as long as if they're not talking about you, you're probably doing your job well. It has been a long time since the Titans special teams coach was like just a non-issue.
It has been. I mean, those weekly press conferences with the special teams coordinator have to be up there with some of the most interesting in the league when you talk about just specifically two special teams coordinators.
Yeah, and now you got a new one. All those same questions, dozens and dozens of questions can all be asked again of this guy. Get excited.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the hiring of John Fossil as the new special teams coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. Also take a look at some updated coaching searches around the league, including one that may happen pretty quickly here today. We'll get into all that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We're taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, which are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Titans have hired John Fossil to be their next special teams coordinator. We'll take your thoughts on that. Joe, in the meantime, the coaching carousel in the National Football League continues on. Ben Johnson hired by the Chicago Bears to be their next head coach. Now, Ben Johnson, as we've talked about a lot, probably the hottest coaching name on the market in terms of the up-and-coming coordinator. We knew he was going to land a job somewhere, and it will be the Chicago Bears. He stays in the NFC North. Your thoughts on Ben Johnson, the Bears being able to land him, and his decision to go work with Caleb Williams?
Yeah, there was some talk about this, maybe not being his preference, some talk about Jacksonville now. I think it might have been Diana Rossini reported that, that something about the interest there that basically made me think, Shad Khan, like, does he really think that much of Trent Baalke? Basically, because apparently Harbaugh was also interested. So if you want to look at it in a certain way, that's what it was. It was actually Ted Gwynn from The Athletic tweeted, like, basically he chose Baalke over Jim Harbaugh a year ago, and now Ben Johnson. Like, great,
good stuff.
Good luck with that. So, but
what has Trent Baalke done down there to position himself the way that he seemingly has? It's unbelievable.
Well, Khan did say going into last year, he said this is the most talented team in franchise history. So apparently he thinks he's done amazing.
Which is just a moronic statement, by the way, but yes.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't know, man. But Ben Johnson of Chicago does make sense. Caleb Williams, it's going to be now he's in the same division with his mentor and friend Dan Campbell. It's going to be interesting. Chicago is very excited, and I don't blame them for being excited, but can Ben Johnson be the total head coach? I think he's a tremendous play caller. I think a little less of him based on, I still can't get over the reverse flea flicker. Jameson Williams, make a big throw for us, please. We're down 10 in the biggest drive of the entire season. Let's put it in your hands. I still, here and there, he has his moments where you're like, okay, man, all right. But overall, I think he's a elite play designer, play caller, all that stuff. So now, is he an elite quarterback developer? I mean, Jared Goff was, a finished product. Basically, Jared Goff had been to the Super Bowl as a quarterback before he ever got to Detroit and Ben Johnson. So that's another part of this. How much of his value is quarterback, grooming, and how much will that click with Caleb Williams? But they're excited, and I think it could work out. But you just, most of these offensive guys do, but as we move through time, Robby, more and more, there are failures, and there are just guys who aren't cut out to be the full head coach. And again, right now here in Nashville, so far 0 for 1 on seasons with Brian Callahan. Lots of that not his fault, but this may turn out to be one of those that didn't work out too.
Well, if I were the Bears, this is who I would want, right? Like, there's a lot of talk about Vrabel before he was hired by New England. There's talk about Mike McCarthy coming in and being that culture guy there too. But this is who I would have wanted if I were the Chicago Bears. And look, maybe it doesn't work out. I don't know. I do think he is an elite play caller. I think he's an elite play designer. Now, what does that look like as a head coach? Like, as you know, Joe, some guys are just really, really good offensive coordinators and are not cut out to be a head coach. I have no idea whether or not Ben Johnson is going to be a great head coach or if he's not. But I think given the situation you're in with your franchise right now, like, it is critical that you give Caleb Williams the best opportunity to succeed. And in my opinion, the best opportunity for him to succeed is to marry him with an offensive guy that is going to be the play caller. You don't have to worry about, losing an offensive coordinator a year down the road if things go well, that is calling your plays. Like, he's going to be the guy in charge of the offense and building things that way. And then you have to hope he can make some really good hires to handle the defensive side of things and put together a good staff around it. But this would have been, I think, target number one for me if I were the Bears. I hear all the Vrabel stuff. I hear, all the Mike McCarthy stuff, but this is exactly where I would have gone if I were them.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you have to think in terms of the QB. And look, I'm sure it was embarrassing for Caleb Williams when those kids got his number and faked him out into thinking that Ben Johnson was reaching out to him. But if you're the Bears, you're like, well, gosh, he'd be happy if we hired Ben Johnson. I guess we should hire Ben Johnson, huh? Yeah. Caleb should do that for real now. He should have Ben Johnson, put it on his Insta, or whatever.
Here's the conversation between me and the actual Ben Johnson.
Yes. Yeah. Have some of that, suckers. But no, I agree. This is when it comes to the offensive, play caller guy, which are typically in some years, it's almost like that's the only thing teams want to hire. Right. I'm glad that we've gotten to the point where it's kind of like, there's a mix of different. There's defensive guys, and Vrabel was very coveted during this cycle, but still, that's still the hot hire. And it is when you have a Caleb Williams, to have, if it works out, then again, you have that coach, and you have you don't have the concern about losing the guy who's done so much to build your offense, because he's your head coach. And that's the problem with the Lions, even though actually Dan Campbell is technically an offensive guy. So maybe it'll look a lot similar, but that's a huge loss for him, obviously.
Well, and he may be losing another coordinator as well. Aaron Glenn is visiting with the New York Jets today, and the reporting around that this morning, Ian Rappaport put it out there. The goal for the Jets is to not let him leave the building. We heard that last year with Brian Callahan and the Titans, and it worked, and they got Brian Callahan to a contract while they were there. Apparently the goal for the Jets is to not let Aaron Glenn leave the building, and they have zeroed in on him to be their next head coach. So we'll see whether or not they can come to an agreement. It's the second interview for Aaron Glenn with the Jets. He did the first one virtually. This one's in person. So it looks like the Jets have made Aaron Glenn their target, Joe, and the Detroit Lions could be losing both of their coordinators.
My advice to Aaron Glenn would be, get out, Aaron. Get out now.
Yeah, I don't know if the Jets is – I mean, look, it's a head coaching job, so I get it, but I think another job.
He played there. Yeah, I liked the Saints for him. I liked that idea. Not that, like the Saints have, a QB question and not a great roster, but they have pretty solid ownership. The Bensons, pretty good reputation over the years. And, man, the Jets job, it just seems like a black hole, just sucks people in and, but yeah, exactly. His head coach job. Yeah, if you're the Detroit Lions, boy, you can't even win a playoff game. You lose both your coordinators. That's a tough combination right there, baby. But, let the tradition continue. Let the tradition continue
for the Lions. And Joe, don't look now, if you believe that the Raiders have lost out on their guy here with Ben Johnson and that was their top target. A lot of speculation today. Mike Florio's put this out there. A lot of speculation today that Pete Carroll may emerge as the top target for the Raiders. What do you think of that?
It's interesting. Look, if Pete Carroll, I hate to limit someone by their age. That'd be hypocritical of me. What is Pete Carroll? Is he up to 75 yet?
I don't know. Let's see.
He's in his 70s. I think. Look, if Pete Carroll is all
73.
And okay, hey man, can you get a good 5 years out of Pete Carroll? I think he's really good. Obviously he's a really good coach. So I don't hate it. Especially if the coveted candidates out there, have been scooped up. I don't hate it. I think that could be a decent hire. I have wondered here, is Cliff Kingsbury, is it too soon for him? He was just sort of bounced out of Arizona and everybody's like, oh God, that was a bad hire. And then obviously this year, so much success as the OC. And of course, if you're him, you're like, boy, I sure am glad I have Jaden Daniels as my quarterback. But still, I kind of thought that he might start gathering some momentum here.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what that looks like. I would still, this is just me, I would be hesitant on him. Once you do it again for another year as a coordinator, but I don't know. I'd be interested. It's does he make sense for a team like Jacksonville? Everybody still is connecting Robert Saleh to Jacksonville. We'll see. But would Cliff Kingsbury make sense for a team like Jacksonville that looks at it and says, all right, maybe he's the guy that can get Trevor Lawrence unlocked here. I don't know.
I mean, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'd be more excited about Kingsbury than Salah,
I would
just to, at least to have an offensive guy. So that's a good thought. I mean, no one had Dave Canales getting a job a year ago, and all of a sudden he did. There's some people, by the way, talking about Liam Cohen, with the Bucks, who had a heck of a year as OC.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Alex Daugherty from the Tennessean will join us coming up next. We'll get into all things Nashville Predators with him, including an interesting trade situation that was thrown out there last week. We'll get Alex's thoughts on. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-1063 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Preds back in action tonight, taking on the San Jose Sharks. They've won 3 in a row. And to help us talk more about that, we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Alex Daugherty from the Tennessean. Alex, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I definitely did not wake up 5 minutes ago.
Good. Hey. We woke up.
I am awake. I'm awake and I'm here.
Yeah, we were going to quiz you about what
we were
going on.
going to quiz you. So, yeah, I'm glad that you're ready. Glad that you're prepared. So, Alex, when you look at this team, the way that they've played, they've won 3 in a row. The math would tell you that getting back into kind of the playoff push here is going to be really, really hard for them. However, I did lay out yesterday on the show, schedule coming up is not exactly murderer's row. They get San Jose twice this week. They got Anaheim on Saturday. They got 2 more trips, 2 more games with Anaheim after that in the season. A couple of trips to Buffalo, Chicago on the schedule. They have the easiest schedule in the league remaining. So, being 12 points out of a playoff spot, do you think that with the way that the Predators are playing right now, can they get themselves back into the mix here by the time the Four Nations break rolls around on February the 8th?
Yeah, I heard you say that, Robby, that they had the easiest schedule down the road. It's and I looked at it and it's pretty crazy. Like they don't have a really tough opponent until Colorado, I guess, and that's after the break. So it's like this, yeah. Until the break happens, they have some very, very winnable games. I think that they can definitely make it interesting. Not to rain on the parade here, but they have. There's all kinds of websites that generate your playoff odds and everything, and the one that I always follow is Money Puck. It's not like I just use that one because it's usually pretty easy and pretty quick. They update it very quickly, but they still have Nashville at a 4.5% chance of making playoffs. It's been around like 2 or 3 for a long time. Yep. I mean, it's been really low for a while, and in fact they've had a playoff percent chance below their chances of making the number 1 pick odds for a while too. They have a 5% chance of making the number 1 pick. So I'm not ready to say like it's a possibility yet, but they can certainly make it interesting. You got this 2 San Jose games at Anaheim, like you said, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Ottawa in there. I'd say if they get it within 8 points going into the break, I think that's probably enough to think, hey, they have a chance here, because then there's 30 some odd games after that. I mean, 32 games or something like that after that. Is that right?
Around there, yeah.
Something like that. And that would be, making up 8 points in 30 games seems like a reasonable thing. If it's still in double digits, I just feel like it's not going to happen. So you get it under double digits going into the final, last little bit before the trade deadline and everything. I think that they could probably make it interesting.
I get that they're playing better. The schedule thing is very interesting. I have no trust that I think they're going to lose one of these games soon to that they shouldn't lose. Tell me, am I too pessimistic? Has this team beaten all optimism out of me, Alex?
No. That's exactly why I brought up the playoff odds thing, because it feels like unless you see the miracle happen, like it's just not. And the miracle being winning a 4th game in a row, like that's the miracle you need to see in order to believe, because they've won 3 games in a row, 3 times this year, and they just did it again. And I think everyone is just expecting, okay, they're going to go get shut out by San Jose here in Nashville, and that's gonna be the end of that. I will say this: there are some obviously some signs of like things look better. I looked at some numbers. So earlier in the year, before Steven Stamkos took over at first line center, they were scoring 2.30 goals per game, like worst in the league, and just so bad. 2.30 goals per game is just terrible. When he took over, it bumped up by about a half a goal. If you look at after he took over, which is around the Toronto Maple Leafs game, and then since January 1, they're at 3.4 goals per game. So they're over a goal better since that'll happen. So, since Stamkos took over at 1C, since they've gotten things going, since Forsberg and Marchessault are going again, that's encouraging. I mean, like you feel pretty good if the offense is scoring 3.5 goals a game and the defense is looking better and your goaltenders are, managing things. You feel pretty good about it. But I'm right there with you, Joe. I until the team can prove it can win, 4 games in a row, you can't just think, oh, well, maybe they could reel off 10 in a row, like David Poyle said the other day.
So, Alex, there was an interesting report that Elliot Friedman put out there last week on the Ryan O'Reilly front, basically insinuating that Ryan O'Reilly does not have trade protection from the Predators, but the Predators are basically treating him as if he does. And if a team is calling and is interested in Ryan O'Reilly's services at the deadline, that the Predators would definitely talk with O'Reilly about that before ever making a move. What do you make of that? Is that the right approach from the Predators? How do you view that report from Elliot Friedman?
Yeah, I mean, if this team at all wants to think that they have a chance, like, you can't trade the only other center you have. I mean, they already have center issues. And then I just don't think that Barry Trotz wants to deal away Ryan O'Reilly. That was like his culture change move, right? I mean, he came in, he buys out Matthew Shane, he trades Ryan Johansson, he gets Ryan O'Reilly. And last year, the Ryan O'Reilly signing was like by far the biggest move that improved that team. I mean, he came in and changed a lot, right? I mean, you saw it in practice and in games and the way he carried himself. Like, I think it's way more about, it's less about, trying to figure out how to move forward and more about like keeping that culture around. That's what Barry Trotz is all about right now. So I just don't think there's any way they trade him. That's why I think he probably said, we're acting like he has a no trade clause because we're not going to trade him. So I just don't think it's going to happen. And I think even if they don't come close to the playoffs, I think they'll keep him because they got 2 more years on him. They could probably get more, next year with a guy like that if for some reason they're out of it again, a guy that has 1 year remaining that, could be looking for a cup contending team. I think that would be more likely. It just doesn't seem like this year will be the year to do it.
Man, this franchise used to not give out no trade clauses, and now they're honoring fake no trade clauses. It's quite a reversal, huh? Well, speaking of the trade deadline, Alex, let's say this team does start really getting on a heater. Do you think that this could get all the way back around to Trotz?
Oh my gosh!
Considering a rental, I mean, I know.
Joe,
I'm sorry.
There's no way, Joe.
I'm just asking.
There's no way they cannot. Barry Trotz cannot be fooled into thinking that it is time to buy. There's no way. I mean, I honestly think he wouldn't do that. I think he learned a lot last year. He's still a new GM, right? Like he's 2 years into this, and I think he knows that he probably shouldn't have bought last year, or at least like maybe he should have tried to trade Carrier because obviously that didn't work out, and he had to trade him right away after he signed him. So I really don't think that he would get into a situation where he thinks, all right, let's go pay for Erik Karlsson from Pittsburgh, or let's go get Brock Nelson from New York. I do not think that would happen. I think Barry Trotz has maybe learned a lot over the last little bit. Now, however, would he do some sort of backdoor buy where he buys a younger, maybe like potential future piece? Yeah, I think that could happen, but that would be more of like a let's flip this guy and pick up a draft pick and then turn that draft pick into something else, and it would be less of a buy for now, right? Sort of like the Justin Barron thing. Like that wasn't really a buy. Like they like him for the future, but it's not like they're buying a piece that's going to be there forever.
So Philip Forsberg went 18 games in a row without scoring a goal, and now apparently he's going to score from now until the rest of the season. It's pretty incredible to watch the run that he's on right now. What do you make of, number one, the 18-game goal drought that was just really weird? He was putting up assists all over the place, and now nobody can stop him from scoring a goal for the last 5 games.
Yeah, he's making up for it. It's like when you have a hose and it's cinched, and then all the water comes out at once. I think Forsberg is. I mean, he's still been that guy. It's like we've been watching him all year, and the power play thing is very strange. Like he has 6 power play goals, but I think there's something strange happening on the power play where like they can't. No one, all these shooters and all these scorers, and none of them can decide who wants to try to score. Right? It's so weird watching it because you feel like they should just be able to score every time, and yet they can't. And I know they've talked about the right-handed thing, and I guess that's part of it. But at even strength is really where Phil Forsberg shines, I think, and he's got 9 even strength goals, and that leads the team. And I think that's where you need him because that's where he can make the most difference. That's when you put him out there and he has a chance to use his power, use his size, and use his skill to maybe just to really disrupt things. It's just like what can other teams do when he gets going? And then Steven Stamkos with his playmaking ability, the old playmaker Steven Stamkos, just dishing out assists, making it happen is exactly what we thought was going to happen. So Forsberg, I mean, what's he going? He's obviously not going to match last year's goal total, but he could still get to 30. I mean, like that would be pretty impressive if he got to 30 after the 18 game stretch where he didn't score at all.
Yep, absolutely. Alex Daugherty from the Tennessee, and our guest does an outstanding job covering the Predators for the Tennessee. And Alex, great stuff. Go back to sleep. We'll see you in a few hours.
I'm already awake now. I'm good now. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Alex Daugherty, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. What Preds Pick to Click coming up next. Be the first caller, 615-737-1025, our phone number. If you guess a goal scorer for the Predators tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. We'll do that next. Get back into the Titans as well. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. Preds pick the click here on Robby and Rexrode. Preds in action tonight, taking on the San Jose Sharks, the final game of the 5-game homestand. Puck drop 7 o'clock, pregame 6 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. A standings update. Joe Rexrode back on the board last time out, as were the listeners. Joe Rexrode, 10 correct answers, leads the competition. The listeners and myself with 6 correct answers. Nick Keyser's falling behind at 3. Nick Keyser's got a lot of ground to make up if he's going to catch Joe Rexrode by the end of the year. Although Kuharski does have credit for 2 of these. So it's Rexrode and Kuharski, the tag team.
It doesn't matter, man. There's no I in team. There's also no U in team.
That's
no
true.
K in team either.
That's true. A lot of letters that are, in fact, not in team. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in Ty. Ty, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Who is your pick to click tonight for the Nashville Predators?
Morning, boys. We're going to roll with Steven Stamkos today.
Going with Stammer in the competition. Ty, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
So Steven Stamkos is off the board. Nick Keyser, your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
I'm going to go one Philip Skorsberg, please. He was wearing his Swedish pants yesterday, head of the Four Nation. I think he's feeling himself.
I was hoping that you would go with Forsberg. I was really worried that with 3 correct answers in the competition that you might pick, Luke Schenn today or something like that.
Maybe even Kiefer Bellows, who doesn't play.
Too many deep cuts. Too many deep cuts,
Dude,
Nick.
Yes.
A lot of deep cuts going on. I will go with the man that we just discussed with Alex Daugherty. Give me Ryan O'Reilly on the board for the Nashville Predators tonight. Stamkos, Forsberg off the board, as is Ryan O'Reilly. Joe Rexrode, your pick to click.
You know who wasn't happy that Nick picked Forsberg? Forsberg. I'll go with Marchessault.
Going with Marchessault in the competition. Stamkos, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault off the board in Preds pick to click. Today, Preds taking on the Sharks tonight. And then they travel to take on the Sharks on Thursday, Joe. It's very weird. Home against the Sharks tonight. On the road against the Sharks Thursday. It does not look like Yaroslav Askarov will be in net tonight. So hopefully he will Thursday. I mean, surely we can't go through both these games here without him playing.
Gotta have it, man.
Yeah. It's got to happen at some point. Quite frankly, the fact that he played yesterday and not today, have a little bit of a pulse, San Jose. You're not doing anything this year. Come on. What are we doing here?
Apparently he was sick yesterday, too.
Well, yeah. Give him a day to heal and get back in here. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, the NHL, you should want to entertain people and give them storylines. It's kind of a good idea sometimes, maybe.
Especially when you're cheeks, which the San Jose Sharks are. So
you don't think they're buns? They're only cheeks?
I think they may be buns.
Okay. Now they're really buns that they messed this up with the goalie.
Liam McLeod, going back to the NFL coaching carousel. Throwing this question out there, Joe. Is it unusual for a coordinator to go to a division rival, referring to Ben Johnson going from coordinator of the Lions now to head coach of the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, first of all, the Kellen Moore thing, of course, Moore has been with the Cowboys, but he's the Eagles OC.
Yeah.
He's clearly done a good job with the Eagles. I think that he's going to be the choice for Dallas. So there would be another one. I mean, it's happened. Let's throw it out there. And people remind us. I know this has happened before, right?
Mike Vrabel was defensive coordinator with the Houston Texans and became the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, if memory serves me correctly.
There you go. Thank you. You just got one. I'm sure there's actually quite a few that would qualify. I'm trying to think of I'm just coming up empty right now, but I bet you there are at least a handful to 10, 5 to 10 that could come pretty easily to mind on that. It's not like it's some taboo thing at all. It's there was a report that, one of his reasons for reluctance was that he didn't necessarily want to, be in the division with Dan Campbell, but that can't end up being that big of a reason that you do or don't take a job.
I wouldn't think so. First off, it's an elevation, right? So it's a job elevation. The teams can't stop you from doing it. So if you end up, let's say I'm the offensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers offer me what I think is the best situation, I'm going to take the San Francisco job. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings on the Arizona Cardinals staff there, but you got to do in this business kind of what's best for yourself at that point.
Exactly. Like one thing that comes to mind, but they're not in the same division, but they were rivals because they played in the playoffs later. Is like when Buddy Ryan left the Bears to go to the Eagles, Again, not the same thing, not the same division, but like that became a really good playoff rivalry. And I still think that the Eagles absolutely beat the Bears if they're not playing the freaking fog in that 1 year in the playoffs, which you guys probably don't know what I'm referencing because I'm old. But for those of you of a certain age, you know what I'm talking about. They had to like put the announcers stand on the sideline. That what did they call it, the fog ball? Yeah, the announcers had to stand on the sideline at Soldier Field to call the action because you couldn't see it from the booth. So yeah,
That's kind of awesome.
that's a good way to minimize the impact of Randall Cunningham.
Yeah. Well, can't see anyone out here. You can't throw the ball. So,
yeah.
That's hard to play football.
On the other side, it was like, Jim McMahon or Doug Flutie or whatever, just, handing off.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, going to get back into the Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward discussion. I got some takes I want to throw Rexrode's way. We'll also throw the question out there. Who do we believe is going to have a better pro career between the two? Take your thoughts on all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, sponsored by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. We'll have Steve Layman from News Channel 5 join us at 7:30. We'll get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. Casey Alexander, Belmont men's basketball coach, will join us at 8 o'clock. Big game for Belmont tonight against Bradley. We will discuss that with him coming up at 8 o'clock. Right now, taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025. Joe, going to be a lot of discussion with Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward over the next few months here. Should the Titans draft one of those guys? Should the Titans pass on both of those guys? Should the Titans go the veteran quarterback route? And we've discussed some of that already. My question for you today is just simply this. Who do you think is going to be the better pro? When everything's said and done, when their careers are over, who do you think is going to end up being the better pro football player? Will it be Cam Ward? Will it be Shedeur Sanders? How do you view what both of them could be at the NFL level? And how do you view kind of the skill set that each of them bring to the table?
I'll go with Scott in Hoptown. Who has the better NFL career is whichever QB doesn't come to the Titans.
Wow.
Hey, Scott. I get your optimism. I get your pessimism right now. I do. Two things. First of all, I'm not changing from I'm out on the whole thing. I don't think anything's going to change my mind. I just don't think either of them are going to be great or have careers that are going to end up in retrospect warranting the one or the two pick that high. I just don't think so. But I'm also going to stick with I definitely would draft Shedeur Sanders over Cam Ward. As much as I certainly at times love watching. I mean, I love watching Cam Ward play. It's an absolute, amusement park ride of fun, but and he has a ton of talent, and his arm talent at times is ridiculous. I go with accuracy over most things, and that's where I think Shedeur is very good, and so I would go with him. In either case, you're not talking about. You're really not talking about like a run threat, not really. I mean, neither of them are like statues like Jared Goff, for example. But anybody who wants to like tie like Jaden Daniels to these two guys, no, Jaden Daniels is one of the best runners I've ever seen at quarterback. Like seriously, he has a knack. He can accelerate and just keep things alive while keeping his eyes downfield. But then also, I mean, he can rip off a 40-yarder like nothing. It's not even – these guys have nothing like that in their skill set. So, like, erase that idea, first of all. The Jaden Daniels is going to be now the new can we get a Jaden Daniels? I mean, there's just not one, even to me, even close in this draft. But I like Shedeur better. I just think he's more accurate and and also I think you look at some of the throws. I mean, his arm talent is definitely very good too. Beyond just, it's not like he's just like Kirk Cousins with like accuracy, but doesn't have a big arm. He's got a big enough arm.
Yeah, I think he's got a good arm. I think Cam Ward has got an exceptional arm at times. Like I think his is like there's a lot to like about Cam Ward. I mean, just in terms of the ability to make every throw you're looking for, he's got it. Like some of the plays that he made this year at Miami were unbelievable. Now, the holdup with Cam Ward, I think, is also some of the plays he made this year at Miami were unbelievable the wrong way, right? Like that's the problem at that point. So how quickly could he be an NFL player, a really good NFL player? That I don't know the answer to. And maybe, sometimes with those guys, it just doesn't work out. Like they're never really able to consistently deliver the football accurately enough. And look, it's not like Cam Ward's like some inaccurate passer. Like he completed, I think, 67% of his passes this year. So it's not like there's, some big inaccuracy problem with him. Sometimes it's just the decision making, right? Like some of the decisions that he makes with the football are a bit reckless at times. So number one, can you coach that at the NFL level? And can you highlight some of the skill sets that he brings to the table that are really good without some of the reckless play in there? Like, does that take away from some of the things that he does really well? My answer is Cam Ward. Like, I think long-term Cam Ward is going to be a better player than Shedeur Sanders will be at the NFL level. If it were me, and this is part of what we're going to get into here in the next few minutes, Joe, if it were me, I don't know that I would play Cam Ward immediately. I just don't know that you can afford that luxury when you're taking a quarterback number 1 overall.
Yeah, it's just right. Obviously, it depends on your situation, but I mean, I think it'd be great in any case to sit a quarterback for a year or as much of a year as you can. Something that's already coming on the text line, and we've kind of dunked on it some, but I will say it's not as to me off the wall as I think people are going to make it out to be, which is the Cam Ward's too similar to Levis thing. We've seen Levis in the NFL now.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to say, oh God, not even close. But as prospects, like 2 years ago, Levis coming out again, some people are talking about him. I mean, the number 1 pick thing was like that kind of brief thing, but certainly Will Levis was expected to go in the top 10. And Will Levis, to me, absolutely a better athlete than Cam Ward. I mean, Will Levis, the Josh Allen comparison ended up being bad. I mean, no one's like him, as a runner, but like you could see it with Levis with some of what he did at Kentucky. But the problem, it's like the unknown being undefeated thing. A part of this is when someone goes and all the warts are exposed in the NFL, it's like you think back and you forget that they were very highly thought of prospects, and Levis was. And I think as prospects, absolutely there's a comparison there in terms of just the death picks and the hero ball stuff that that tends to rise up and bite them. I mean, I think that there's something to that comparison.
Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Jared in Spring Hill. Jared, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, fellas. Hope you had a great weekend.
Thank you.
Weighing in on this, I would definitely side with Shedeur just from the standpoint of if the Titans pick him, let's look at it from this standpoint, or this is what I have to try to look through it as. If the Titans pick Shedeur, there's no, sure pass catcher over the middle like a Brock Bowers or somebody. The line is still very bad. And I don't think, and I think that Callahan is going to have to play the quarterback if he drafts him to prove that of his worth around here. So having said all that, Sanders to me has showed the best fundamentals that's going to be able to get him on the field as a rookie and then stay on the field as a rookie, leaning on those fundamentals, hopefully avoiding injuries, staying on time with his passes. Because again, if you're Callahan and you draft Cam Ward and you sit him on the bench and then you lose out again, are you really sure you're going to have your job? Then the cycle starts yet again with another guy, which is why I feel like that if you clean house, you don't have to worry about this. But looking at it from a Titan standpoint, I think Shedeur gives you the best right now sizzle in the pan with his fundamentals than the other guys. But I'm here to see it all fold out because, it's the Titans. And the Harbaughs have this saying, who's got it better than we do? Nobody. Well, as a Titans fan, who's got it better than we do? Everybody. See y'all later.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it.
Well done.
A lot of things, I would agree that Shedeur Sanders is probably more ready to play in the NFL right now than Cam Ward is. Like, to me, if I'm a Titans fan, though, I don't really care about that. Like, if I'm Brian Callahan, I care about that. I want who's going to be the best player in the NFL. And if you believe that that is Cam Ward long-term more than Shedeur Sanders, then draft Cam Ward. I don't really care if he's ready to play at a high level next year. Now, I realize my job's not on the line. So it's a different situation. Like Brian Callahan, I think certainly would prefer a quarterback that's ready to play next year. But as like a Titans fan, I don't care about that. Give me the one that you think is going to be the best option long-term.
I agree for sure. Now, if you're Brian Callahan, you could also, this is where it's like, how does Amy look at it in terms of, well, if Brian Callahan's keeping his job, that tells me that they still value and believe in his ability to develop a young quarterback. That's one of the biggest selling points, right? And so that, again, they're just blaming Levis. And he was unteachable teachable or whatever. I don't know. Just not good enough. That's fine. So if you do believe that, I mean, you could look at it like it actually might buy him more time if you have a rookie year where you take it slow, and you're counting on him to develop him. But here's another thing I'd say about the whole camp, like ready to play. You may be right that, that Shedur's more ready to play. I mean, I guess I could buy that. But it may just be that this is just what Cam Ward is as a player. And so you can sit him, and he's going to come in and be like, oh, I can make that throw. Like, so, you know what I mean? Again, I keep going back to Brett Favre, but it's like that never changed with him. He was a gray beard veteran in the NFL and still doing like, no, but had a talent to often overcome that with 330 and 3 touchdowns and go with the pick 6. I mean, so I don't know if it's a matter of like, take a year and strip down his game and get him ready, or if it's just like, this is what you're getting with this guy, and it may be good enough with the ability he has that you can overcome that. But I'm scared away from that, frankly.
615.
And maybe it's a little bit of recency bias having watched, Levis this last year.
Yep. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll continue the Shedeur Sanders Cam Ward discussion, including one scenario where I'm okay with the Titans drafting a quarterback and signing one this offseason. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt men's basketball. Commodores taking on Alabama with a 6 o'clock tip-off and pregame at 5:30. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Vanderbilt men's basketball presented by Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball, coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium February the 5th through March the 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly BI membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Steve Layman for News Channel 5 will join us here in about 12 minutes. We'll get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. So, Joe, in general, I do not love the idea of what some have suggested to us the last couple of weeks of drafting a quarterback and signing a quarterback in free agency. I think there are too many holes on this team where you can allocate some of those resources elsewhere. I in a perfect world, would like to see them really pick one path or the other. Either draft the quarterback and have him ready to play, or go sign the veteran free agent and address other needs in the draft. Having said that, there's really, I guess, one scenario where I'd at least be okay with the Titans going this route. Let's say you get through the draft process and you're convinced that Cam Ward has the tools to be a really, really good NFL quarterback. You think he can end up being an elite guy for you, but maybe you feel like he needs half a season on the bench to really learn your offense, to be coached by Brian Callahan, and to work on some of those habits maybe that are concerning to you at the NFL level. Would it make sense at that point to draft Cam Ward, and also prior to that in free agency, go out and sign a Justin Fields or somebody of that mold to be kind of your bridge guy until Cam Ward would be ready at that point? Again, I don't love that idea, but that would probably be the only scenario where I'd be okay with it, is if you feel like maybe Cam Ward needs a little bit of time this year before he's ready to play in game one. Now, the counter argument to that, Joe, would be, all right, well, if you feel like Cam Ward needs that much time, do you really need to draft him with the first overall pick, which is a fair counterpoint.
Yeah, but like you just said earlier, well, yeah, if you think he's going to end up being great, if you think that it's going to take a little time and he's going to be great, then sure. I mean, you draft anybody at number one, eventually he's going to be great. You don't have to be instantly great in this league. I hate to do the tried and true Peyton Manning comparison, but he was not great as a rookie.
He was not.
31 picks. Got to play through it. And there's another example too of, I know he was on, I think it was like Kevin Clark's podcast, making the industry point. It's like, I think playing through it, there's a lot of value of playing through it if you can get through it, right, and keep your confidence. But then obviously we see all these examples of not playing through it, of sitting, and that paying off. So It's just different for different people. Well, I think as I've said, I don't hate Justin Fields as an idea in general. Yeah, that could be a competition too. I mean, it's kind of like what the Steelers did this year.
Yeah.
They, I think the idea was probably all along that Russell Wilson was going to end up getting a starting job, but he was hurt. Justin Fields was winning early, and it was like maybe Justin Fields turned the corner, but ultimately he just wasn't good enough. Then Wilson was better when he came in there. But that was kind of like that same sort of idea, although with two veterans, just one way more veteran than the other. If you brought in Justin Fields, let Cam Ward sit, and then maybe Justin Fields does turn a corner, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, you've actually got a guy that you can start for a while, and maybe Cam Ward has to sit for an extended period of time. But okay, I mean, again, that's worked for some franchises too. I don't hate the idea. The reason I hate it most is just that you need so many players at so many positions. How do you get competitive if you're spending that many resources on quarterback?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, again, in a perfect world, I really don't love the idea of signing a veteran and drafting a quarterback number one. Now, having said that, I mean, the quarterback is undoubtedly the most important position on the roster. So making sure that you get that position right is paramount in this discussion. So really, regardless of how you do it, as long as it's right, nobody's going to care at the end of the day. And you can address some other holes on your roster later theoretically. But it would be great to just pick a path and have that player come in, be ready to go, and then you can also address needs elsewhere. Keith on the text line says, draft one of the quarterbacks, have him sit on the bench and watch Levis and learn what not to do. It's from Keith on the text line. Levis catching some strays on the text line today.
Well, then you could be in position to draft another quarterback next year.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
could have a three-way competition. It's just an absolute quarterback surplus.
I got one text that says, great idea. Let's give our coach that can't develop quarterbacks two of them. One that's washed up at best and another that he'll ruin. This from an unnamed texter on the text line.
Well, there's definitely on the text line a fair amount of why would you believe that Brian Callahan can develop a quarterback? Again, if you don't, if you don't, then you don't have much going on there. You know, does Will Levis's season of 2024 prove it? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I understand here's a talented guy, a lot of arm talent, great athlete, smart kid, and it didn't work out. So how much of that is on Brian Callahan? I mean, the Titans have made it. Yeah, he just doesn't have it. You know, he's just not good enough. I mean, I do believe that's true sometimes. Like it can be true that a QB guru doesn't develop a quarterback because that quarterback isn't good enough, and then someone else can come along and they can have success with them, right?
Sure.
And then you can get into was it that they developed him, or is it they just lucked out to get this good guy now?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, there's nothing that happened this year with Brian Callahan that I feel good about moving forward, right? Like I'm not sitting here on January 21st saying, yeah, I really am confident in Brian Callahan doing this moving forward. I also am willing to give him at least an opportunity now that they've elected to keep him here. I mean, like you got to give him an opportunity to see, was it just Will Levis? Like, was Will Levis the problem? And you're going to get an opportunity either with a veteran quarterback or a drafted quarterback to show that you still can develop a quarterback if it's a rookie, or that you can manage a quarterback if it's a veteran and build a system that you can win more football games with. I understand. Like, there's no reason right now to feel great about Brian Callahan. I'm not just going to totally dismiss the idea that he can't develop a quarterback either, just based on 1 year Will Levis.
Yeah. No, I'm not either, but I get the idea too. As a caller earlier said, this if you're going to do the drafted QB, you have this lame duck, then start over. You have the lame duck coach. I know it's only 1 year, but in this league, 1 year can be enough, as we've seen. We're seeing it over and over again, that we have 1 year coaching tenures in the NFL. And certainly we have 2 year coaching tenures in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. And so if that's the case, then you start over. Yeah, it's developing the quarterback, but like you said, Robby, it's like fitting what you do around that quarterback skill set.
Yeah.
Then I don't know that was an issue with Levis this year or not. I know there was some talk about, Callahan and, Burrow is one of the great short intermediate guys in the league. Not that he didn't throw deep to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but he was really good at that. Whereas Levis, if there's one thing that he does extremely well, better than other things, it's vertical shots down the field. Did they do enough of that, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, ultimately, it just gets hard to even know when a quarterback is under the kind of duress that Titans quarterbacks were under this year.
We'll have Steve Layman.
It's all muddled. You can talk yourself into either side.
We'll have Steve Layman from News Channel 5 coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on the quarterback discussion for the Titans, his thoughts on the hiring of Mike Borgonzi as general manager. All that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, sponsored by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you. We head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Steve Layman from News Channel 5, talking all things Tennessee Titans. Steve, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Maybe it's just how early it is, but I sort of feel like I went back in a time warp this morning. The Big Ten is consecutive national champions in football. What's going on there?
I know. It's wild. Tough times for the SEC. SEC, just rough right now. Got to get back on top. Can't let the Big Ten run away with it.
I mean, it's incredible, and no signs of stopping. Ohio State, with the resources they have, Michigan's coming back with Bryce Underwood at quarterback. So there's some good teams up there. Not that the SEC is going to go away, but it definitely looks like a two-conference race here moving forward.
Yep, there's no doubt about that. So, Steve, it has been a very busy couple of weeks here for the Tennessee Titans. Rand Carthon out as general manager. They've gone through their search with Chad Brinker leading the way, and Mike Borgonzi from the Chiefs is where they land for their next GM. What do you make of that move and the way that this offseason has transpired to this point for the Titans, with Brian Callahan remaining on staff, Rand Carthon being out, and now Borgonzi in as GM?
There's a lot going on there. I think, like anything that happens with this team right now, Robbie, you almost have to wait and see to judge any type of move that they make, because there's just been so much uncertainty about the direction they're trying to go. And even in this situation, I think the dismissal of Rand Carthon raised so many questions about what the organizational hierarchy was the last couple of years and what he was truly responsible for this past year. And I think now you get a little bit more clarity with Chad Brinker being truly the guy at the top of the food chain in the football department, and Mike Borgonzi coming in to be the guy in a lot of ways, essentially to buy the groceries for what the roster is going to look like as general manager. And he has a great pedigree and background with that. What he did with that group in Kansas City looks really good on paper. I think he's a tremendous candidate that they got. And so I give them props for that. But if you look at where Rand Carthon came from, San Francisco had a really good track record when they got him a couple of years ago too.
Yep.
Now, the experience level between those two guys is completely different. Rand Carthon was pretty early on in a pro personnel type of role in San Francisco. He was not the top guy there. And so to come in and be the general manager that was really in charge of everything, especially after Mike Vrabel was let go, now all of a sudden, like, everything falls on Rand Carthon. I'm not sure if he gets that job if Mike Vrabel wasn't the head coach in that situation, because I think they thought they had such a strong-willed head coach that they were willing to give a lot of the responsibility to and a lot of the final say to at the time. Now you have a much different situation than that. So Mike Borgonzi comes in with a ton of responsibility when it comes to this football roster. I think he's going to have significant say over some of the coaching decisions and the staff decisions that Brian Callahan makes as well. And so I think you have a little bit more of an idea of what the structure actually is going to look like. But they've changed it so many times over the last 4 years. Why do we think this structure is now going to be the one that works? And so while I think the hire is a good one, at least on paper, we can only wait and see how it actually plays out.
Right. Like, I agree. He's a guy who, if you hired someone that could have gotten another GM job or other GM jobs, that means something. And he has had a key role there by all accounts. But the Titans, to me, have said different things about Brinker's power just in the last couple weeks. So I have I have no idea. They have an incredible knack for making things as confusing as possible, which at this point I have to look at as intentional to some degree. But another key there, of course, Steve, moving forward, is Brian Callahan. And we've talked some about him today, and obviously quarterback development, which is a big selling point with him. And he's coaching a bad roster last year. He's trying to work with a quarterback who I think independently did some things that no one would ever coach someone to do. But still, it was a bad year. So what do you think of Brian Callahan as a coach based on the information available and his standing right now in this organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it would have been the easier move at the end of the season, especially with the number 1 pick, to just clean house completely and try to bring in all new people with the understanding that you're moving forward and put them all a level playing field, put them at square one so you can do the full evaluation of every piece of it over the next couple of seasons. They decided not to do that. I think that's frankly the harder decision in this because it keeps everybody at like these stair-stepped levels within the organization about how long they've been there and what their power level is. You have to strain really hard to see areas where the Titans showed promise under Brian Callahan. You've got to dig deep into the analytics to things like third down conversion rate and stuff like that in short yardage situations and all that to find an offense that lives up to any level of the expectation that you would have had for Brian Callahan coming in. That said, two things stand out to me about what happened with the Titans offense last year. Number one, if you watch the divisional round of the playoffs this weekend, I don't know if I saw Will Levis or Mason Rudolph have as much time at any point in the season that any one of those quarterbacks had during the four divisional games over the past weekend. You simply cannot function if you cannot stand back in the pocket in the NFL and dissect the field and throw the ball where it needs to go. And the Titans still, just like a couple of years ago, didn't have an offensive line to do that consistently. And then the second part of that, and again, look at the divisional games this weekend. All four teams that lost in the divisional round this weekend actually had the most total yards in the game. But they also had the most turnovers in the game, and the quarterbacks turned the ball over the most in the game. And that's how you lose. And the Titans turned the ball over an incredible 34 times this season, the vast majority of those coming from the quarterback position, some of them in head-scratching ways that I've never seen before. You cannot win like that. And I think that's where you have to come back at the end and ultimately say, okay, if we're trying to assign blame here, most of the blame goes on Will Levis in the quarterback position. And so if you can change the quarterback and maybe upgrade the offensive line a little bit, you can get a little bit more of an evaluation. And so the way I look at it this year, guys, I look at it that this is the true Brian Callahan evaluation. Last year, you really looked at it as, what do we have in Will Levis? Can we actually get a franchise quarterback out of a guy that we got in the second round of the draft? And I think by all accounts, you have your answer right now. You don't. And so now you go into this season with a new quarterback, and the evaluation is as much on Brian Callahan as anybody else. Can Brian Callahan, with a different guy back there, succeed as a head coach and a play caller?
So, Steve, speaking of quarterback, I mean, obviously we still got 3 months from now until the draft, but how do you view what the solution is at quarterback for the Titans? Should it be a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward? Are there veteran options that either are available or could realistically be available that interest you? How do you view what the Titans should do at quarterback this offseason?
I think we're still a little ways away from figuring it out. We got to get more information about what these top two quarterbacks in the rookie class look like. And frankly, after this playoff performance, does Will Howard get any love in this? I mean, he threw for more yards and more touchdowns. I know he had a couple extra games than C.J. Stroud did at Ohio State. I think maybe there should be a conversation about his poise, his toughness, his size, his arm strength, all of that stuff as you come into it. But ultimately, they have to look at all those guys because this is the most important decision for this franchise over the next few years. When you have the new stadium looming out there, if you hit with the quarterback, it may not mean you're a playoff team this next year, but you at least have some positive momentum moving forward over the next couple of years. If you don't, and you go through another season next year similar to what they just went through, I don't know if there's going to be anybody there in the month of December next year. And how you move that forward to try to sell more tickets in the new building, that becomes really challenging. And so, as Brian Callahan said, they have to turn over every stone to try to figure this out and identify whether it's one of those guys in the draft class that they can and should take at number 1 overall, or if there's some other guy out there that you can identify. Me personally, I think the best possible situation because I don't love anybody in this draft class. The best possible situation is falling in love with a veteran that you can bring into this situation and be serviceable. I don't think you're getting a star there. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the answer. But is there a guy that Brian Callahan can show his offense off to, operate at the level he wants to, maybe not with a superstar, but with someone solid, and then you build up your roster in other places, starting with maybe a trade back that gets you a few more assets in a draft that you don't have a ton of draft selections? I think that's the perfect world. But who is that guy out there? That's something that they would have to identify. And obviously, they'd have to make it happen in March. So I think you know that answer here in a couple of months, not all the way in late April. If they go out and they make something happen in March, then you have the option to try to pursue a trade and do something different with that pick. I don't see a world, guys, where if they don't do that in March, you aren't taking a quarterback at number one. Because if you have the number one pick and you need a quarterback, you've got to take a quarterback.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioning Will Howard, Steve. We did talk a little bit about that earlier. I don't know that he's high prospect. But I considered him a non-prospect, like I still consider Riley Leonard going into the playoff, and I think he at least made himself draftable here with this run, right? I mean, he was pretty spectacular for sure at times. I did. A team, a franchise you know very well in your lifetime. Is this going to be it? Is this going to be the magical hire that brings Lombardi's back to Chicago?
Well, Joe, as you well know, I think fans have a feeling about organizations out there, and if you're not a very successful organization, you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I can just tell you, yesterday when the news broke, several of my friends who are diehard Bears fans living in Chicago, the response was essentially, I can't believe they got a hire right. Of course, we still have the same ownership and the same people in charge, so I'm just waiting for it to work out poorly. However, so they're already waiting for this to somehow get screwed up and not pan out the way they want. But on paper, they got the right guy. And, in a lot of ways, like the Titans last year, Brian Callahan was the most coveted first-time head coach in the pool. And what good did that do them last year? They had the worst record in the league. And so I think there's a lot of Bears fans that are concerned about that. But they finally got their offensive guy to pair with Caleb Williams, who did show a lot of promise last year as a rookie. And I think there's reasons to be excited there in a division that all of a sudden after the playoffs maybe doesn't look quite as much like a murderer's row as it did during the regular season.
Steve Layman from News Channel 5, our guest here on the program. Steve, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us, and we will talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, guys. Do me a favor. Give Casey a hard time for sleeping in when he comes on with you.
Oh, I will. I will absolutely do that. Appreciate it. Steve Layman, our guest here on the program. We'll react to what Steve had to say, the Rex rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next as well. And as Steve threw out there, we have Casey Alexander coming up at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. It is that time of the day. It is now that time of the day for the Rex rant. A little quick on the trigger there for Rob. Joe Rexrode's rant of the day. You can check it out every morning here on the show. A lot of people on my personal text line very concerned about Joe's well-being with the bandage on his head. A lot of people very concerned about it, Joe. Just pointing that out.
Hey, first of all, let Keezer cook, man.
Yeah,
Let
that's my
Keezer
bad.
cook,
That's
okay?
my bad. Right.
Right.
All right, well, I'll get to my head. This is a little, we'll call this a little piece of advice for someone who works at a rental car place. That's ultimately what this is. But Jared's texting me like, what the hell happened to your head? So for those who didn't hear, yesterday, we are coming back from Florida. We're at the Tampa airport. We are turning in the rental car, which is like a nice Hyundai Tucson. And I basically am to the side of the car, and I go to the back to like look and make sure nothing's still in the back. I think we got everything out. What I didn't realize is that someone had hit the button for it to start coming down. And so I sort of simultaneously went to look, and all of a sudden the corner of the gate smacked me right in the head, and it immediately hurt a lot. And all of a sudden blood started like going everywhere. So long story short on all that, basically I was on a plane with a bloody bandage on it. People, I mean, it's like you forget, like people are staring at you. You're like, why are they staring at me? Oh, that's right. I look like a Saturday Night Live character, Head Wound Harry. Yeah, that's right. That's why they're staring at me. And I sent you guys a nice picture from the plane with my bloody bandage on. Ended up, going to get stitches. I had to get a tetanus shot, of course. You got to get that tetanus shot because you have dirty metal in your head. The doctor, great job at the Vanderbilt urgent care, but they treated me nicely. They had to, clean it out and cut some hair out of there. And then I was told, well, they took about a 3-inch chunk out of your head that's still back in Tampa, and the hole's so big we can't even staple or stitch it. So here's like a foam clot thing that I have to go get. So if this ends up being like that, my beautiful lettuce is compromised for the rest of my life, what am I going to do? Like if I shave my head, like, you and PK look nice with the clean domes, but now I got this big Harry Potter scar up here. I don't know what I'm going to do. But here's my piece of advice. If you were working at a rental car place and a customer does something like this, and first of all, you may have been the one who hit the thing to go down, and a customer is sitting there like falling all over himself, blood all over the place. His kids are like trying to help him. I'm like, yeah, my dad's bleeding. Don't sit there, punch up your thing and say, hey, does 280 sound right for the price, sir? I'm like, do you have a first aid kit?
Great time.
He's just like, hey, how's that? Dude, will you get me some medical equipment?
Did they get the price right?
Yeah. Well, I have no idea. You're probably going to double charge me and cut my head open and really made off like a bandit. But finally, someone came with a first aid kit. We're all like fumbling through there and trying to and then like he was going to call 911. I'm like, dude, let's just get on the plane. I mean,
911. Good gracious.
Well, it was like, I don't know. It won't stop bleeding. What are we going to do? I mean, to be fair, he probably doesn't see stuff like this very often. But just if you see someone who's bleeding as much as I was, or it looked like the Hyundai Tucson was at a murder scene, focus on that. And then we'll talk about whether the prepaid gas worked out.
How was going through TSA with a gash in your head? What was that like?
Well, again, it's just like you're walking around and everybody's staring at you.
The security guard look at you and just be like, what happened to you?
I mean, a couple people were like, you okay? Yeah. I mean, I was like, not only was I like that, I was like seriously in pain and like woozy. And then we got, some food and some ibuprofen, and it was better. But then later I had to go get myself, along with the tetanus. Of course, you got to get those antibiotics going to get the dirty metal stuff out of your blood so it doesn't really cause a problem, and some painkillers. So I'm walking around a grocery store and I just put my hood on, because I don't want people to look at my head anymore. So I looked like, a sinister character walking through the grocery store.
So
But,
are you okay?
hopefully,
Like, or is this still ongoing? Like, we feel like we're all good and the situation's under control, or is that still up in the air?
well, I mean, as soon as we finish here, I'm going to go back into the same urgent care, and they're going to look at it. And I don't know. I don't know, man. They've cut a lot of hair out of there. I can tell you that, though. It's going to be I may be Mr. Hat Guy for a while.
Oh boy. It's been the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. We'll take your well wishes for Rexrode on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Casey Alexander, Belmont men's basketball coach, will join us coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. Belmont basketball back at it tonight, taking on Bradley, 6:30 at the Curb Event Center. And to help us talk more about that, we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Belmont men's basketball coach, Casey Alexander. Casey, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm great, and I hope you guys are.
Oh, we are. Appreciate you. Yeah, you got to watch out for Rexrode. A lot of things going on in Rexrode's world right now.
Head wound, Harry.
Yeah. Casey, I want to start with the win against Evansville the other day. I saw an interview you did with Steve Layman after the game, talking about how you guys are 7-1 in games decided by 5 points or fewer. And I'm just curious why you think that is. Why do you think your group has been so good in tight games? Is it just the poise they show? Is it great coaching? How would you answer that question?
I wouldn't claim it as great coaching. I think great coaching would be 7-1 and double figure wins as opposed to small margin wins. But you know what? I think we got off to a good start this year, winning some games early in the season. And I think it's just carried over. Along with that, though, I think we do have some really good playmakers and guys that can get us a bucket when we have to have it down the stretch. So it's a combination of those two things. And those things don't really even out. People tend to think that, well, you win some, you lose some. I think it's a little bit deeper conversation than that.
So Casey, huge one against Bradley, and you've got them twice here in a couple weeks. So obviously those are critical games. I mean, right now there's a little separation, it seems, but maybe you don't see it this way, but you guys, Bradley and Drake, and of course you lost to Drake on the road. Don't get them at home this year. It's a tough break in the schedule. But first of all, just how big is this game? What about the matchup? And do you see it that way? Do you look at it like you're right there with either of those two as a team that could ultimately end up emerging from this conference?
Well, I look at it that way. If we can start winning some of these, the Drake game was not our best. They're really good. They had, I think, a 28-game winning streak at home when we played them that has since been extinguished. But Bradley's is in that group. They will remain in that group, and so this is a really good test for us. They're an extraordinarily good team on both ends of the floor. I think they're 7th in the country in effective field goal percentage on the offensive end, which is a tall order for us. Defense is not our strength, but we're excited about the opportunity, and definitely, I mean, if it's a game where, hey, if we do win it, then we're tied for first. So I guess we have to start putting ourselves in the thought of that conversation.
So Casey, as you look at the conference this year, your impressions on the Missouri Valley Conference as a whole, and just the journey for your group so far to this point, what have you learned about your group to this point in the year?
Well, we're like a lot of leagues in a sense that we have 5 new coaches. There's a ton of transfers. The vast majority of our returning all-conference guys transferred high major. And so there was a lot to figure out early. But the Valley is built for success. It's still the 11th best league in the country out of 32. And it's a really tough place to win. That Evansville game being a good example of that. They're a team that's been in the bottom of the league, but they've been super competitive, and they're really hard to beat at home. And so that's just the way that it's going to be. I don't think any of us are so overwhelmingly good, kind of the Indiana State of last year where they were kind of playing at a different level. So a lot can happen between now and March, and definitely a lot at Arch Madness when we head to St. Louis for the tournament.
So, Casey, you guys are 23rd in tempo, and I know, look, efficient, up-tempo offensive basketball has been Belmont basketball for a long time, but I'm wondering if that's a little bit of an uptick for you guys, and then also the balance scoring across your lineup, maybe a little deeper in terms of, guys, like you said, who can get you a bucket as opposed to being top-heavy in terms of top scorers. Are those two things in your mind, significantly different this year?
Tempo is not significantly different. I'd say we're, more times than not, we're going to be in the top 25 on the offensive end, which is really the only part of that you can control. We do like to play fast. We play with a lot of freedom, not a lot of set plays, and so that's the reason for our tempo. The distributions of scoring, that's just kind of happened organically. We lost we lost our 3 all-conference players from last year, and all 5 starters. So when the year started, we didn't know where our buckets were going to come from. But Jonathan Pierre has emerged as a really good, talented, versatile player. Carter Witt has been extraordinarily good as a point guard. And then we've had some other guys that have had big games. And I like it better this way. I like it when on any given night we're going to have 3 or 4 guys that can get us mid-teens or 20.
Well, you bring up Carter Witt there, Casey, and obviously the distribution of the ball at that position really important. But his ability to score and to go get you a bucket, how valuable has that been for your group?
Yeah, it's been really valuable, and it's increased as the season has gone on, and especially here lately. I think over his last 5 games, he's averaging 17 or 18 a game, and you combine that with 4 to 5 assists a game. That's a heavy dose of your offense right there, and no better place to get that from than your point guard. He's really he's settled us down. I think he's probably the most dependable guy as far as production goes that we have. I think he's going to be really consistent moving forward. So really, really glad and fortunate that part of our portal process worked out as well as it did.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, obviously, the scenario you just laid out for us, not ideal. That's tough. It's pretty amazing that you guys are performing like that when you have those kinds of losses. I know the Valley has been pillaged a lot, but do you feel like you have a better handle on just sort of the process of roster reconstruction each year than maybe even a couple of years ago?
Well, we're farther along. I think you have to be really cautious about it because just when you think you're starting to figure it out, things change and you're dealing with a completely new set of circumstances. But what we've learned with this particular team that we have now, when I think back to working through the portal last spring, it was really more important than ever to us that we get guys that fit how we play and who we are. And that has sustained us. There was a level of experience that came along with that. And you combine all those things, and it really allowed us to cut our losses quickly and kind of move on with a new team that's capable of winning 20 games again.
So Casey Brigham-Rogers, 16 points, 8 rebounds against Evansville. What has he brought to your group this season, and just in terms of his level of play, being a threat to score, but also the ability to rebound the ball and control the game that way?
Yeah, his emergence lately has been another key part of our success. We've won 5 in a row, and he's had the lion's share to do with that, along with Carter, as I just mentioned. Brigham he was really just a minute eater and a big body that played hard and gave us some physicality. But here in the last 5 games, he too has. He's probably averaging 14 or 15 a game, maybe 7 or 8 rebounds a game. He's off the charts with offensive rebounding, and some of that was completely by necessity. Drew Sharnowski, who's our other big at that position, has largely been unavailable for the last 3 weeks, and so Brigham had to rise to the level of the occasion, and he definitely did.
So along the lines of that, of the scoring distribution, Casey, and again, you guys have been a very good shooting program, many good teams, but 6 guys with in the 20s or more hitting threes, the lowest percentage among them, at 32%. I've got to think that this is for you even a little bit more than you're used to in terms of having threats on the outside. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's how we've always wanted to build our roster, but you never really know how things are going to play out. For example, last year we had Tyson Gillespie and Dia. All 3 of those guys averaged in the 16, 17 points per game range and were all conference players, and everybody else was just kind of don't screw it up role player, and that team was good. It won 20 games, and we had some success, but the distribution and multiple guys that can get it is always better for our offense. We've traditionally been a high assist, very efficient offensive team that scores a lot of points. And the biggest reason for that has always been because we have multiple guys that can make shots. So the more the merrier, to say the least.
Oh, Belmont taking on Bradley tonight at 6:30 at the Curb Event Center. Casey Alexander, our guest. Casey, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate you taking some time to join us this morning. Good luck tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, guys. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Casey Alexander, Belmont men's basketball coach, our guest here on the program. We'll get back into the Titans Coming to next, take more of your thoughts. Got some of your thoughts on the quarterback front to get to. We'll do that as well. The Titans have hired a new special teams coach, so we'll get into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Appreciate Casey Alexander for being with us in the last segment. Taking your thoughts on the Titans. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Joe, lots of different thoughts on the quarterback discussion that we had on Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, including, as Steve Layman brought up, Will Howard at 7:30. Some people not a fan of the Will Howard stuff on the text line. Joe Rexrode, your thoughts?
Oh yeah, is that right? Yeah, look,
Well, he's certainly not going to be the number
think-
one pick. Like, we know that.
No. Will Howard is, I mean, to me, Will Howard made himself draftable. And when I say draftable, I mean, like I'd say fourth, fifth round, something like that. But again, that's a jump from what I thought going to the playoff. I mean, I didn't just like, I think you did see last night. I think a lot of people have compared Howard and Riley Leonard. Obviously, we've had a lot of time to build up to the national championship game, and they're both 3-star recruits. They're both good running quarterbacks, who aren't necessarily great passers. I think you saw last night, Will Howard can spin it. Riley Leonard is a quarterback draw guy who every once in a while makes a throw.
Yep.
It's actually amazing that Notre Dame got to within, they were in a 1-score game to win the national championship with Riley Leonard at quarterback. He's not in any way a pro prospect. I think that Will Howard and his catalog of throws that he showed in this 4-game stretch is going to help him. And here's another thing, Robbie. Someone on the text line earlier, I think Robert was like, well, if you didn't think Jaden Daniels was awesome a year ago, then your opinion means nothing. And my point was, well, I mean, I didn't think he would be this, but also if we're going to go by who's wrong on quarterbacks, then nobody's opinion, media, fans, GMs, coaches means anything because we're all dead wrong so often. But a year ago, I would have laughed if you told me that Bo Nix is going in the first round and that Bo Nix is going to be in contention for rookie of the year, right? Laughed at it. Laughed loudly at it. We made fun of Sean Payton when they drafted him.
We did.
They did. And there you go. So Will Howard is big, strong, he's athletic. And again, like the arm talent looked pretty good in this run. This season at times, I thought he was the thing that was holding them back.
Will on Music Row saying, what's a realistic win for next year? Can the team get to 500? Are we 3 years away? Is it more of a can Callahan and Brinker prove themselves? Better said, what is success for next year? Joe, I don't know that you're ever 3 years away in the NFL. Like, you shouldn't be. With the way that the rules are and the ability to turn your roster over so quickly. Like, I don't think like 3 years away from what, I guess, would be what I'm asking. Like, are you talking a Super Bowl championship? But like, that's impossible to predict. But like, you should never be 3 years away from getting yourself to being competitive and competing for the playoffs ever in the NFL.
Exactly. Like there's every single year in this league. I would be willing to bet if you went back 20 years and went through each season, you'd find a team that was bad the year before and the over-under on wins was 4.5 or whatever, and they at least got to like 9-7, made the playoffs or something like that. It's built for that. So Titans fans should not have to wait 3 years for a competitive team. Now, a competitive like a contending team, well,
yeah.
Who knows? You might wait 30. Okay,
That's the thing. Like, that's hard to get to. But like, again, we've brought this example up. 3 years ago, we were talking about the Titans losing in the divisional round to Cincinnati and the 3 interceptions that Ryan Tannehill threw. That was 3 years ago. So that shows you how quickly things can change in a 3-year span. Like, it's pretty dramatically different now than it was back then.
Exactly. So look, last offseason, let's say everything went well. Let's say Snead is a all-pro level corner and Woozy plays all year, and on and on and on. Go through the list. Nicholas Petit-Frere is actually just a serviceable lineman, which was not asking that much of him. It's not asking that much of a third-round pick, coached by one of the best offensive line coaches ever, to be serviceable. And Levis, it takes to Callahan's coaching and careful with the ball, whatever. I mean, the 3-14 worst team in the league could have gone 10-7. I mean, again, I'm going through a long list of things, and all of them went the other way, but those were still things that they tried to make possible in one off season.
Exactly. And look, who's to say they can't have a great offseason this year? Like, if you get quarterback right, I'm not saying that they've got to be an all-pro next year, but whether it's the veteran or drafting one of these guys, if you get quarterback right, if you can find a halfway decent edge rusher out there. If you can get some better play on the offensive line, like how much of a difference does that make? And look, somebody's brought this up too. We were talking about the duress that Levis has been under. And I buy this to a certain degree, not the whole thing, but I buy it to a certain degree. I mean, one texter says a lot of the duress from Levis was self-inflicted. The offensive line is not great, but Levis drifting in the pocket, getting off the midline during his drop back, as well as leaving a clean pocket into pressure made it much worse for the offensive line too. Like, I don't think Levis helped there. So if you get a quarterback in here that is better at that and can move better in the pocket and is just has a better feel for playing the position at the NFL level, how much does that help? Again, I'm not saying the Titans are going from 3 wins to, in the divisional round of the playoffs next year, but you can make a pretty significant improvement from extremely awful in this league to decent. Like that's not a very difficult jump to make in the NFL. Now, getting from awful to great is pretty hard.
Yeah, just get to decent. Everybody's supposed to be decent. That should be the expectation. Be decent. Again, to me, it's like in December, play games that matter and are games that can help you get to the playoffs. I mean, every team should. There's no excuse. There's an excuse for very few teams, and it's only the teams that are rock bottom. I mean, I know you say the Titans are rock bottom, but you could have an offseason that gets them to that. Absolutely, you could. As far as the Levis in the pocket, I agree. But I also watched Mason Rudolph play last year. I watched Ryan Tannehill play last couple of years. But just take last year. Mason Rudolph. It's not like Mason Rudolph. I mean, he has better pocket presence than Will Levis. But basically, his solution was just get the ball out in 0.9 of a second.
Right.
And that's how you let's not sugarcoat how bad the offensive line was. It deserves zero sugarcoating.
No, I agree. It's got to be at way back. And look, to that front, like Skoronski got a lot better throughout the year. So that's a positive. I don't know what to make of Latham. Like Latham, I think, has the traits to be a really good player. I think Latham, as the season went on, struggled more and more. That was just kind of my read on it. So what does that mean? How does that kind of line up for him next year? Like I still have hope that he can be a pretty darn good player for them. But is Latham going to be a franchise level foundational left tackle, which is what you drafted him to be? I don't know. Like, I'm not saying he's not going to be, but it wasn't, the path for him was not linear this year. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. But I think the tangibles are there. The intangibles are there. And it's no excuse at all, but you're J.C. Latham, you're used to playing at Alabama. And now you're playing more football than you've ever played in your life, and it's totally meaningless football. I mean, again, it's not an excuse, but I do think sometimes there's a culture shock for people, especially when they come from a great program into a brutal franchise, and it's just a slog to the end. So I think he's gonna be fine. I think he's gonna be very good. I think it's fair to look at it, depending on who you could acquire, and at least talk about whether he might be better on the right side. But at this point, I would still expect that they just look at him as the left tackle. He's obviously got to take a big step next year.
More of your thoughts on the Titans to get to coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, sponsored by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Joe Rexrode's got a question for Vols fans coming up here in a few minutes, which we will get to in the aftermath of the national title game last night. Right now, we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Dude, has anybody made the comparison to Mike Borgonzi? Looks exactly like George Costanza when he had hair. Do you remember this?
I've not seen anybody make that comparison.
It's so good, dude. That's the first thing I thought. I figured somebody already told you that. So, all right. So I'm trying not to get too excited. Like, I want to stay level-headed because I remember thinking when we got ran, I'm like, the 49ers don't have a weak spot on that roster. So if he was responsible for that, I felt pretty good. And then you see what happened. So, like, you could break it down, and I've done it, to like, all right, is it Andy Reid? If you take Andy Reid off the Chiefs, are they still a winner the way they are? I don't think they win as much, but I think they're still pretty good because if you pluck Patrick Mahomes and put him over here, are we a good team? I think we'd be a good team. So I don't know. I would have to think that pulling the Chiefs, important Chiefs executive, and putting him in charge is a really big move for the Titans. So I like it. It's the first time I've been excited about the team in like 6 months, which is a start, right? Like, I'm not even – I just wanted somebody to lift the rock off my throat, you know? Like, this is a start. So hopefully he does something good. I'm pulling for him.
Yep, thanks for the call, Adam. Appreciate it. Joe, a couple things. Number one, the still shot of Mike Borgonzi that I'm looking at right now, my God, does he look like George Costanza, and I'm never going to be able to unsee that. Number two, what do you make of what Adam just laid out there? I hear what he's saying. Like, look, I'm excited that the Titans hired Mike Borgonzi. Like, I thought they were going to go John Eric Sullivan. Not that I didn't think John Eric Sullivan couldn't do a good job, because I think he could. But the fact that they got Borgonzi, I think, is exciting, and I think Titans fans should be excited about it. Having said that, I mean, Rand Carthon did come from a successful organization that put together a really good roster that did a whole lot of winning, and it just did not translate here. So there's no guarantee that it translates here with Borgonzi either, even though that he has been around a team that was built through the draft to develop, retain model, and has done a whole lot of winning.
Yeah, man. So do we have to start calling him assistant to the traveling secretary instead of assistant to the regional manager?
Maybe so.
We have to consider that. Also, does this mean the Titans are going to go to all cotton uniforms?
Yes.
I hope everybody gets that reference. You know, the thing is, it's kind of like the converse. Is it the converse of we've talked today on the show, Robby, about the, you know, like, basically, if you want to feel optimistic, you could, if you want to put like all but a little bit of the blame pie on the plate of Will Levis, you know, then you can talk yourself into more optimism about things moving forward. On the flip side of that, you could take Borgonzi and all these guys over there and say, yeah, well, they all jumped on the Patrick Mahomes gravy train and toot toot and all look like geniuses. You know, I mean, you could look at it that way too. Now, I don't necessarily subscribe to that because, again, the reason I think that the Chiefs are where they are with a very pedestrian offense this year is the fact that they have a great defense, and they've done a lot to build and replenish that side of the ball. But still, Mahomes finds a way to win so many games that are toss-up games. And it's just, and, you know, in his brief time here, Will Levis, there were some games right.
Are you saying the Titans would have won more games this past year with Mahomes at quarterback than they would have with Will Levis?
You know, I'm cautious with my takes, but I think I will go ahead and put that one out there.
That's good. I'm glad we nailed that one down.
Yeah.
Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Cam to the program. Cam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, fellas, good morning. So, number one, I'm just going to throw this because, you know, it is Titan atmosphere. Has anybody checked to make sure that's not just a dryer sheet on his head? Because that could be a dryer sheet, and he called out of work and couldn't make it into work. I'm just saying, but the first thing I saw when I got, because I'm watching it on the YouTube, and I'm telling you that looks like a dryer sheet.
So Rexrode is just a total sell job this morning.
Absolutely.
I'm closing in on the camera for you.
So I was listening to this as it was all unraveling, and I asked Jared this yesterday, and Jared was stumped. You can go back and watch it. He literally said, that's a good question. I really don't know the answer. So I listened to this all day yesterday or all day Friday, and it was, well, he wouldn't take this job if he didn't have commanding lead. He knows what it's like, this, that, and the other. But then Chad Rithrow came on in the fourth hour and said, but what if he just took it because it pays better and it has a better title? And I'm 33 years old. I've taken a better job, even though it wasn't a better job with a company just because it did pay better and it was a better title. But in all actuality, they just took the janitor title off the placard off the closet, and they put the GM placard on the same closet. And they said, hey, this is your office now. And what if everybody in the room, family, friends, relatives, are saying, hey, you're going to be the gopher. You're going to be the gopher. This is how the Titans do it. Once it's over, you'll be the gopher. You'll be the general of football operations.
Yeah.
You'll be the gopher. You just have to wait it out and let everybody else fall off. It's like a sitcom. It's like you just have to wait for everybody else to die.
Well, that's the way that things have operated around here lately.
Absolutely. Now you're the gopher. And when you're the gopher, then you can do everything you want to do it. And I just want, Jared said yesterday it was a good question, and he couldn't give me an explanation. So I'm with Chad Rithrow. I'm kind of just wanting to know what you guys think about it.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Cam. I appreciate it. Well, Joe, look, I can't get inside Mike Borgonzi's head. I don't know. I can't tell you every reason why he would take the job. I will say this. You know, we talked about the piece at SI.com yesterday that Albert Breer put out there, in which he says that Borgonzi has final say on the roster. Like, I don't think that Albert Breer is just pulling that out of thin air. Now, having said that, we talked for the last couple of weeks about how Chad Brinker has final say, and Chad Brinker has talked about having final say. So I don't know what all that means. Like, I what sort of semantics are we getting into with the final say part of this? There's been more discussion about final say around here over the last couple of years than any franchise I can ever remember. But that's just the way that it's gone. I don't know why Mike Borgonzi took the job. I don't know if it's as simple as you get the GM title and the pay raise, and that's a good enough reason. I do know this, Joe. The aftermath of the hiring, a lot of people were talking about Mike Borgonzi was going to be a legitimate candidate moving forward for general manager jobs. So I don't think he just took the first job available to him for the sake of taking the job. I could be wrong about that. That's just my guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's like he was going to, like some people take these jobs and they weren't necessarily going to get a job. It seems like he was going to get one. So again, in this slate, you try to build up to that. That's when you make your big money. That's when you get your big shot. And if you can sustain it and get to that second contract, so we talk about players getting the second contract. John Robinson got that second contract, still living on that sweet Amy money right now, man.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you get that, you have some success, and obviously you can set your family up, for generations. I mean, so it's a huge deal to get to this point. I still would think that you would want to go someplace where you can sustain it, where you feel like it's not going to be, where you don't have necessarily an owner who has been scattershot all over the place with decisions lately. That's where, not to mention just the haziness about the power structure. As for the Breer story, absolutely. Breer is a great reporter. He's got good sourcing, which tells me that the Titans are talking out of both sides of their mouth, which is exactly on brand for the Titans.
Yep. 615.
It's just exactly what they do. And it's incredible, but they keep doing it.
615-737-1025, our phone number. More of your thoughts to get to on the Titans. Plus, Rexrode, with a dryer sheet on his head, has questions for Vols fans in the aftermath of the national title game last night. We'll get to all that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Final segment of the day, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines. If you missed any of the interviews today, Alex Daugherty from the Tennessean, Steve Layman from News Channel 5, Casey Alexander from Belmont Men's Basketball. Check it out, Robby and Rexrode, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, thegamenashville.com. They will be up for your listening pleasure. Joe Rexrode, in the aftermath of the national title game last night in which Ohio State wins against Notre Dame, you have a question for Vols fans that you'd like to throw out there?
Well, I just wondering if Vols fans feel better at all because the team that waxed you ended up waxing everyone and going on to win it all. I know that was a very disappointing night. I do see some early preseason polls that have Tennessee in the top 10. And so I think that's exciting. I'm with you, Robby. I think that there's some roster questions.
They still got a lot of work
team. Yeah. But look, you got Nico coming back, and even though this wasn't the year everyone hoped for from him, I think obviously Vols fans are hoping he'd have a year where it's like, oh, that dude is going high in the next draft. That I wouldn't say that yet. I think we still saw enough from him and enough growth later in the year to think that with some better help around him, which is where your point comes in, he could be really good next year.
My answer to that is twofold. Do I feel better about losing to Ohio State after watching what they did to everybody else? Yes, I do. I also know that if you eventually want to win a national championship, like that's the level you got to get to. So right. How close are you to that would be the question. Now, I think the Ohio State team this year was a little bit of an extreme example. I mean, you're talking about a $20 million roster, but that's what college football is now, Joe. Like you're accruing as much talent as possible. And like Jeremiah Smith isn't going anywhere. And look, some of it's matchup driven, right? Like if Tennessee doesn't play Ohio State in the first round of the playoff, what happens? Like, are they more competitive with Penn State? I mean, heck, are they more competitive with Oregon? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but clearly Ohio State was the best team. So it's twofold. I feel better about the loss to Ohio State, given the fact that they dismantled pretty much everybody else. But if you're going to win a championship, like that's a level you got to get to. And I still think there's a ways to go for Tennessee before they get to that.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, I think Tennessee could have beaten Penn State, could have beaten Oregon, and really could have beaten the version of Ohio State we saw most of the year. You know, it's just this was one of those. It was like, I mean, I think that there's something too, like the Michigan loss changing them for the better. But
I mean, if the tournament was seeded properly, Tennessee would have played like SMU in the first round. But I digress.
Yeah. And I think that's something to look at for next year. But you know, I like you said, $20 million roster. And it's not just that, right? I mean, Ohio State has been a machine. And so they also like they get some recruits that have something to do also with just like you expect to go there to play for national championships, you know? I mean, the money's going to a lot of these guys are going to get paid similar high amounts of money in a lot of places. But I do think that for Tennessee, they just put out a press release on their another record-breaking budget year.
Yeah.
Everything is off the charts and donations, all the things like that. Like when it comes to resources and being able to have $20 million rosters, I think Tennessee's right there. So it's a matter of making good choices. And then it is at some point, it also comes down to coaching, right? Where is this offense from 2022 that was just so mesmerizing to watch? You know, 2 straight years now that it just on a lot of fronts just was not up to par, even as the defense got to a point where that's a defense. If you have that offense, you are now a national championship contender. Where is that offense gone? How can they get it back?
Well, by the way, it doesn't look like they're making a change there. Like we talked in the aftermath of the offseason about, like, do you look at Joey Halsley as OC and consider making a change? I mean, they hadn't played in a month, and there's been nothing on that. So I would assume that their staff is coming back next year fully intact, and then you have to see if you can – look, I would be stunned if you're Heupel looking at this. We've talked about this. You don't change the whole thing. You don't change the offense entirely. But I think you'd be crazy not to look at it and say, do we not have to make some tweaks here? Like, to me, it all comes back to the tempo thing. If you're going to run tempo, run tempo. But if you're not going to do it, then it takes a big part of the effectiveness of the offense out of play if you're not doing that.
100%. Absolutely. So this year to me this is a big prove it year for Halsley, but also for Heupel, and just, you've had enough time to have offensive linemen develop in your program, receivers develop in your program, and a lot of those guys have come and gone. And so this is a year that Nico needs to be great, and the offense needs to get back to playing with tempo and being one of the better offenses in the game. And if not, then to me, you start to wonder if, okay, it's just kind of cycled down. Teams have figured it out to a point. Goalish continues to deserve more credit than he got at the door, whatever it is. This is a huge prove it year for that offense, for that side of the ball.
I agree. And, Matthew Nashville talking about it's Heupel's play calling. He needs a Ben Johnson or an Alex Goalish again. Maybe. I get that. Maybe. I mean, the thing is, like, Heupel has been the play caller in this offense, both at Tennessee and before he got to Tennessee, where it's been really effective. Like, Heupel was a play caller at Missouri, and it was really, really good. Like, it's so, like, I think Heupel can call plays at a high level. Just why has it looked so disjointed, particularly in the passing game the last couple of years? That's what they got to get figured out.
Right. And look, they have to have more of a difference-making player on the outside.
Yep.
They've had that in the backfield, but they have to have more of that on the outside, and they have to again, like, if you can't at this point in this amount of time building a program, start churning out some offensive linemen who should be all SEC level, should be NFL prospects, then you got a real problem somewhere in your process there at offensive line.
Just need to call Dolly Parton, Bill Haslam, tell him to pony up, get a $25 million roster in there, see how it goes.
I mean, it's worth a shot, man. Why not?
Nate Bargatze, who's a Vanderbilt fan, who's not going to donate. I'm just trying to think of all the people who have a lot of money around here.
Yeah, Barganzi and Bargatze they're occupied with stuff in Nashville, so
they are. Bargatze's worried about Vanderbilt's NIL. That's going to do it for us today.
Barganzi, Bargatze, and Kaharski, the law firm of Brentwood.
That's going to do it for us today. Jason Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.